Achim Steiner, welcome to FFA TV. Now, you've addressed the forum this morning. You are, of course, here as part of the United Nations Environment Programme, and you had an important message, also the son of a Brazilian farmer. So you have lots of experience and perspective to share. Your message overall to the forum was the agriculture economy. Change needs to happen. Change needs to happen now.
Indeed, because we often focus on the farmer, we focus only on the production on a farm, when really a farming operation is embedded in a larger system, an economic system, a social system, but also an environmental system. And I think what my task this morning was to make the linkage between that reality of a farming economy embedded in a larger set of challenges. First of all, a world that will need more food, but a world that is also, with agriculture today, using up 70% of fresh water, is using 70% of the antibiotics, that is also essentially depleting the stock of arable land with the current production system. So these are just a few illustrations of why we have to reinvent agriculture in the 21st century. And this is not the farmer's task alone, because I think the lesson we have learned is that farmers are very rational human beings. They act on the signals, they act on the markets in which they operate, and also the public and regulatory signals they receive. And here, I think we are in the next 20 to 30 years going to face some dramatic changes. And if these are not followed through, then disruption will be a consequence that will be a great threat even to the agricultural sector itself.
Where are your priorities and energies focused? Because we talk about a lot of these very wide issues and the read-through to the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals, one of which says that the need for action with regard to climate change is very urgent, and that overarches the lives of farmers and others. So the way we live, the way we produce, the way we consume, all of these, we can't escape including all of them in the conversation, can we?
Absolutely, and I think perhaps at its simplest, we need to find a way in which we can feed soon 9 or 10 billion people. I expand the amount of food that is available to us, but at the same time decouple that increase in growth of food production from the actual footprint, whether it is carbon emissions, whether it's the depletion of soils, the use of water, or indeed the use of chemistry, so to speak, to replace nature, which is in itself also giving rise to a number of challenges. And in that context, climate change becomes both a threat to the future of agriculture, but a low-carbon economy is also an opportunity to demonstrate that with the right land use practices, with a greater investment in restoration of, for instance, forest ecosystems, or also the restoration of wetlands, which in themselves are part of the carbon storage and sequestration capacity of the planet, farmers in future could be paid for services that are not restricted only to the production of grains or of livestock, meat and poultry, but rather
they protect our natural capital, right?
Indeed, and that is...
And they need to make a business and make a profit somehow.
And our economy so far has not valued those ecosystem services, so their essentially commercial value is zero, and therefore to the farmer there is almost an inevitability in having to mine your own resource in order to be able to compete and survive in this marketplace that attaches such high priority to economies of scale, cheapest possible food production at a maximum output. We need to enable a farmer to be a custodian of our ecological infrastructure, of the ecosystem services, and I think we are beginning to see a change in policy that allows a different kind of economy to emerge, in which a farmer is actually paid for those services that they provide.
What changes are giving you hope then, and what more would you want to see? Because I know you mentioned in your speech about water stress, and some of the statistics about the amount of water we have in the planet is only going to sustain about 60% of us in the next 2 or 3 decades.
It has to go further than just the farmer. That is why my reference was to the agricultural economy. If we were to factor the true cost of production into a liter of milk or a ton of wheat or maize, we would have a different pricing structure. That price would both reflect the costs of production, including those which society then has to bear, but also the services that a farmer is rendering to society. And I think that is the beginning of trying to rethink how we price products and what kind of regulatory framework we put in place. Because markets in the end are not just a matter of supply and demand. They are also an expression of what is important, what are the risks that we face in society. Secondly, I think the private sector has to play a very significant role, particularly in the research and development arena, new science, new technologies. We have to achieve a different form of efficiency in agricultural production. Now, some of that will happen through the large international corporations that can push the frontiers of science and technology. Some of it will be, for instance, a common agricultural policy that allows farmers to optimize land use rather than simply to maximize production in order to survive.
It's the read-through that's so important, isn't it? So the information, the research needs to get, that knowledge needs to get out to the farmers to be able to move progressively and to do it together. This is really the central theme, is it not? And how important is it at the forum today to bring together ideas on how we do move together?
I think it is critical because not only are we faced with a number of legacy issues already from 100, 150 years of modern, large-scale industrialized agriculture that we have to deal with, we also have to reinvent an agricultural economy for the 2 or 3 billion people that still are going to join us in the next 40 years in the global population, in the marketplace. And I think we also have to recognize that the way our markets function in themselves is not always rational. How else do we explain that 1/3 of all the food we produce every year is never consumed because it's either lost between farm and markets because of lack of storage and transport, or indeed it is wasted in restaurants, in canteens, in supermarkets. This is an extraordinary amount of food to waste in a world that actually is struggling to feed the malnourished right now. Something is not working, and I think we need to look at it as a more systems-based approach. That's why also the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, the new 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, is so critical because it does actually bring the economic, the social and the environmental dimensions together. It's an integrated approach to solving these challenges, and it's universal. There is no longer just a European farmer or farming economy or an African one. They are bound together by economic forces but also by ecological realities, including the phenomena of climate change.
Achim Steiner, thank you very much for talking to us and to the forum today.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.